On my 72nd birthday, my son brought a notary and a gift, a one-way lease to a memory care unit I don't need. They came into my kitchen smelling of winter air and expensive perfume, shaking snow from their sleeves. The notary set a briefcase beside the teapot and clicked her stamp like a metronome. My son slid the papers across the table, careful not to look at the lemon cake cooling on the rack. "It's just a signature, Mum," he said softly, as if gentleness could hide the hand on my back, pushing me toward the edge. "They have a garden, music therapy. You won't have to worry about anything." "I still don't," I answered. My daughter-in-law's smile had too many teeth. "It's preventative," she said, "before things get worse." She let her gaze travel over my fridge magnets, the calendars I keep with every bill paid and every birthday noted, as if proof of order could be twisted into evidence of decline. The notary folded her hands. "When you're ready," she murmured, as if readiness were a coat one could be tricked into wearing. I took the top page. The words were thick with kindness and empty of air. Safety, support, compassionate care. Behind them, I could hear the quiet echo of other words: equity, liquidation, vacancy. My son moved the pen closer. "Dr. Peters said you've been forgetting things," he added, almost apologetic. "Like the stove." "Dr. Peters said I should walk more," I corrected. "And I do." I tapped the paper. "This is not walking." His shoulders tightened. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." From her purse, my daughter-in-law's phone buzzed. 1, 2, 3 times. She silenced it, but not before I saw the message flash. "Rick, ready for tour." My house keys, I noticed, were not on their hook by the door. For a heartbeat, the room tilted, the way it does when you stand too fast. This is the child I walked the floor with at 3 a.m., the boy I taught to count change at the kitchen table we were sitting at. How could my own son do this to me? I set the pen down and folded my hands so they would not shake. "I'll review it," I said, "after my lawyer does." Their eyes flicked to each other. Surprise first, then annoyance. They didn't know about the folder already waiting at the bank, or the letter from my doctor, or the neighbor who saw them take my keys. They thought kindness meant softness. They forgot kindness can also be steel. "Tea?" I asked, and the notary nodded gratefully. "If you want to know how this birthday turned into a battle, and how I chose the ground we fought on, I have to go back to the beginning. The ground under my feet. My husband used to say, a house is a promise you keep to yourself. We bought this one when the children were 7 and 9, all elbows and loud shoes. The yard was stubborn clay with a single lilac that refused to bloom. The first winter we slept in coats because the insulation was a rumor. We kept the promise anyway. 41 years later, the lilac is taller than the garage and spills purple every May. Friends bring cuttings and go home smelling like Sunday mornings. After my husband died, the house creaked in new ways. Grief makes the old sounds strange. The stairs groaned like they missed his weight. Pipes clanged at night when the radiators blinked awake, and I counted them like sheep until I learned the rhythm again. I labelled shut-off valves. I sharpened garden shears. I replaced the smoke detectors to the annoyance of no one but myself. I learned what every widow learns. You can do more than you thought possible when no one else is there to do it. Mark, my son, stopped by less. He was busy at work, moving from sales to management to something with a title he never quite explained. Cara, his wife, called often with cheerful lists. "Have you considered downsizing, Mum? Think of the ease, the amenities." I would picture amenities like smooth stones in a fountain, pretty but useless, and tell her I liked my uneven steps and the way leaves drift from the oak in November. The first time the word forgetful was used, it came with a puzzled tilt of the head and a pat on my elbow. I had double booked the dentist and the boiler inspection, a thing anyone could do when calendars breed like rabbits in a drawer. It happens, Dr. Peters said, and wrote more walking on the paper he hands out like recipes. I walked. I felt stronger. I carried my groceries like trophies and slept the sleep of the honest tired. 2 months later, someone misplaced my spare car key. I found it 2 days after, in the pocket of Mark's old Letterman jacket hanging by the back door, the jacket he never wears. I put the key back on the hook and said nothing. There is a time for addressing a thing and a time for noting who believes you won't. My friend Irene, who can coax blood from a stubborn vein and truth from any teenager, looked at me over soup and said, "You should talk to a lawyer before you ever need one." "I don't need one," I said. A week later, I made an appointment with Ruth Henson. She is 58, wears sensible shoes, and could probably cut glass with her voice if we asked her to. She spread my checkbook and insurance papers on her conference table like a picnic and listened. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything," I said. "You're describing patterns," Ruth answered. "It's wise to be early. Capacity isn't only a medical term, it's a practical one. You want capacity to choose your own future." I left with a folder, not red like danger or blue like sorrow, but a garden green that soothed me every time I opened it. Inside were copies of a simple trust document that kept the house in my hands until my last breath, then passed it to who I said, not who felt entitled. There were 2 powers of attorney, one for finances, springing only on my doctor's written determination, and one for health decisions if I couldn't make them. I named my niece Alyssa for both. She cried when I told her and promised to honor my wishes, which is all any of us really want. Ruth also gave me a letter to sign in advance, something I had never heard of, a capacity affidavit, my handwriting, clear and steady, affirming that on that date I understood my decisions. "Overkill?" I asked. "Belt and suspenders," she said. I gave my bank copies and instructed them to call me, not the number on file, for any change. The manager, a woman my age named Claire, smiled at my list. "My mother keeps a little notebook titled, 'It's Still My Life,'" she said. "She'd like you." The fiercest kindness in this story is not mine. It came from a man named Sam Alvarez, who used to deliver our mail and now lives alone with a weathered beagle and a collection of bird feeders. He saw Cara slip my keys into her purse the week before my birthday. He didn't mean to see it. He was bringing back the package the carrier left at the wrong door. "She said she'd leave them someplace safe," he told me gently, when he came by with a bag of suet and a conspiracy of chickadees. "I told her the safest place was the hook, Evelyn." I changed my locks while Mark was at a conference. I bought a keypad lock so I could give codes to the ambulance service and to Irene, not keys that can be copied like rumors. I installed a camera over the back porch because a friend's daughter set one up for me, and because watching raccoons wash their hands at midnight is better than medicine. This is the ground I chose. I did not know when it would matter, only that it would. Cara likes to speak in brochures. She thinks adjectives convince. The home she wanted for me had sunrise in its name, and a fireplace in the lobby, and chairs pichot that looked like they had never been sat in by anyone who needed a chair. Mark booked a tour just to look, and I agreed because looking is harmless, and I wanted to gather my own facts. We went on a Tuesday. The director was my age, with hair the colour of rain clouds and a pretty scarf that fluttered when she walked. She called everyone by name and introduced me to a woman who was planting herbs in a raised bed. June, she said, this is Evelyn. She bakes. June smiled at me. Then you'll be popular. We sat in a room with a gas fireplace that shivered without heat. We're very community-driven, the director said, and showed me an art room, and a schedule that was both busy and vague, and a dining room with menus that read like aspirational novels. I do not say this to be unkind. It was a nice place for people who need it. I listened as she explained the levels of care and the monthly cost with the same breath. Kara's eyes never stopped moving. She counted empty chairs like accounts. Mark asked about medication management and visiting hours in a voice I recognized from when he negotiated for a used car. When the tour was over, the director handed me a glossy folder and touched my arm. We want to be the right fit, she said carefully. Sometimes that means saying no. In the car, Kara said, wasn't it lovely? It was designed to be, I said, like a hotel that remembers your name. Mark drove in silence for a few blocks. Mum, he said finally, I need you to be open-minded. It's not just about you. We worry. Last week you called me to ask the date twice in the same day. I was filling out 2 forms, I answered, and I wanted both to be right. He nodded, unsatisfied. Dr. Peters will tell you I am stubborn, I said, and that my cholesterol is excellent. Kara made a small sound, a sigh that could be labeled patience in a perfume ad. This isn't personal, she said. It's practical. Everything that happens to my life is personal to me, I said. Practical or not. We did not speak again until my house came into view. Rick's sedan was parked across the street. He leaned against the hood, phone in hand, a grin that had "rehearse me" written on it. Afternoon, he called, as if we were neighbors, as if he had ever once carried in a bag of groceries not his own. If you've got 10 minutes, I can show you what your equity could buy. What my equity could buy me, I asked. He laughed. Well, the family, of course. Everyone benefits. From my life, I said, and walked past him. The raccoons would have better manners. Inside, my kitchen smelled like lemon and home. I put on water for tea. Mark followed, fidgeting with his wedding ring, an old tell I used to watch when he lied about homework. Mum, he tried again, this is a lot for us. We're just trying to do right by you. Doing right by me starts with believing me, I said. I am not leaving my house today. What about tomorrow? Kara said sharply. She hadn't come in, but her voice reached me from the doorway. What about next week? I'm not signing anything today, I repeated. And if you bring another notary into my kitchen without my permission, I will call the police and explain why. Her smile cracked then, like ice over a puddle. Explain what? She said. That your family cares? Explain where my keys went, I said. Explain why you messaged Rick, ready for tour, while we were still standing in my kitchen. Mark's face changed in a way I haven't seen since he was 12, and I found the cigarettes tucked in his sock drawer. Shame, anger, a boy's wish to undo what cannot be undone. Kara, he said, warning in his voice. What? She shot back. We can't watch her all day. We have lives. Then go live them, I said. I have one too. They left with a slamming door and the cold convenience of silence. I sat with my tea and watched steam spool upward, and I made a plan. Not the first plan. The first had been the folder. This was the second. A list with dates and names and a place for proof. If you want to know who you can trust, hand them a small truth and see if they carry it carefully. I told Alyssa about the tour. She listened with the attention she once brought to my kitchen when her parents were fighting. That pause a child learns when silence is safer. "I'll come by Saturday," she said. "I'll bring those cookies you like." I told Irene about the missing keys, and she told her son, who teaches high school civics and knows the officer who runs our community policing unit. He recommended a simple thing: keep a log, time, date, who, what happened, what was said. It felt like the old lab notebooks I kept when I was 15 and obsessed with seedlings and light. I kept it in a drawer with the green folder, and I wrote in it like a prayer. On Wednesday, someone called my pharmacy and asked for an early refill on my blood pressure medication. The pharmacist, who has bangs she cuts herself and a memory like Velcro, called me first. "Did you travel suddenly?" she asked. "No," I said, and went there with Irene. We added a note to my file. "Do not accept requests unless Evelyn asks in person." The pharmacist printed the log of requests and stapled it to a sticky note that read, in neat letters, "Let me know if you need me." On Thursday, Mark came by alone. He apologized without saying he was sorry, the way men do when their mouths can't stand the taste of remorse. "Let's slow down," he said. "No more pressure. We'll just talk." "Talking would be good," I said. I made coffee and slid the sugar bowl his way, the same one he used to dip a finger into when I turned my back. He didn't take any. He read the warning in my silence and chose a new tactic. He asked about the garden. He asked about the weather. He told me a long story about a client who had switched vendors and how everyone in the office had opinions. He did not mention the house. I relaxed, not toward trust, but toward the pleasant peace of a day without battle. We looked at old photos, and he laughed at his father's moustache, and for an hour my son was my son again. Then he asked to use the bathroom. When he came back, the drawer with my green folder was closed, but the papers inside were not in the order I left them. I know this because I am a woman who has put away kindergarten art projects and death certificates with the same hands, and there is a way paper leans when it is content. These leaned like they had been disturbed. I didn't say anything. After he left, I checked. My title, now transferred into the trust, was still there. The bank letters were there, but the small envelope with my spare mailbox key was gone. I replaced it the next day, and Sam watched my street like a lighthouse. On Friday, Cara posted a photo of herself at a spa, my car in the background. She had borrowed it for an errand 2 days earlier. I commented, "Nice day for a drive," and she deleted the photo. I printed the screenshot anyway and slid it into my log. On Saturday morning, I went to the bank to empty my safe deposit box. Not because I was afraid, they didn't know about it, but because secrets leave a taste in the mouth like old coins. I wanted fewer of those tastes. Claire walked me to the vault. "We've been asked about your box this week," she said quietly as she closed the door behind us. "By whom?" She pressed her lips together. "A man who said he was your son." "I didn't authorize it," I said. "I know," she answered. "We didn't let him in, but I thought you should know." I opened my box. Inside were the letters my husband wrote me from a job site the summer we were poor and hopeful, and everything was made of 2x4s and grit. There were a few savings bonds I forgot since the last time the news cared about them. There was the tiny velvet pouch with my mother's cameo that is chipped on one edge and perfect anyway. I put the letters in my bag and the cameo in my pocket and left the box empty, except for a note in Ruth's handwriting. Inventory complete. Access restricted without owner present. On Monday, Rick hosted an informal valuation of my home from the curb, like a man appraising a painting from the hallway. I watched him measure with his eyes and make a phone call. I called Ruth. "He's building a market before he has a listing," she said. "It's not illegal. It's rude." "Is there a way to make his life harder?" I asked. "There's always a way," she said. "But remember, the goal is not to win a game. It's to keep your life yours." I slept badly for 6 nights. On the 7th, I dreamed of my husband sitting at the far end of the kitchen table in his flannel shirt and smiling at me. He didn't speak. He just looked at the green folder and nodded. The twist didn't arrive with lights or sirens. It arrived with Alyssa, who came on a soft Sunday afternoon with oatmeal cookies and a tightness around her eyes I recognized from the day her father left. She hugged me a little too long and sat down without taking off her coat. "Say it," I told her. "Whatever it is." She took a breath that shuddered on the way in. "Uncle Mark asked me to sign a paper as a witness," she said. "On Friday. He came to my work. He said it was for you, just a file so he could help with bills. He said you wanted it. I didn't sign." "What was it?" My voice surprised me, not from fear, but from the old steel finding its way to my tongue. "A power of attorney," she whispered. "It had your name on it, but the signature line was blank. He wanted to handle it later." She put her hands flat on the table. "I told him to leave. He got angry. He said I was disrespecting him." "He's used to being obeyed," I said. "He forgets I raised him to be questioned." "That's not all," she said, and slid her phone toward me. On the screen was a string of messages from Kara to her sister. "We need this signed now. He says the bank won't let him touch the box. Dad won't float us another month. Rick says we'll lose the buyers if we don't move." The last one made my stomach coil. "If she won't sign, we'll take her for the evaluation. They always listen to doctors." "Who is Dad?" I asked. "Kara's father," Alyssa said. "He lent them money for the down payment on their house and for Mark's business opportunity last year. He's a contractor." "Rick?" I asked. The name tasted like something too sweet and already turning. Alyssa nodded. "The same." The world rearranged itself. It wasn't just greed, it was debt and pressure, and a man with a grin and a spreadsheet that told him my house could fix his daughter's choices. It was my son, drowning, grabbing for the nearest thing that floated. Me. I called Ruth. "We're done waiting," she said. "Do you have the log?" "I do." "Do you have a plan for the day they try to take you for an evaluation?" I took out the green folder. "I have 3. We set them like dominoes. First, we scheduled my own evaluation with Dr. Peters for Wednesday morning, and Ruth came with me. He asked me to draw a clock and remember 5 words and spell world backwards, and I did all of it with a small, mean pleasure I keep only for tests I didn't want to take. He wrote a letter on his letterhead with words like fully oriented and intact judgment and placed it in an envelope with a seal I wanted to tattoo on my forehead. Second, Ruth filed a notice with the county recorder attaching my trust to the property file. It was not required, it was merely visible. Visibility has power. People behave better when they know someone is looking. Third, I told Irene to invite the church ladies to my house on Friday at 4 for tea and something educational. Church ladies, should you be lucky enough to know any, are the Navy SEALs of community life. They can run a meal train and a background check in the same afternoon. Fourth, I called Officer Bryant from community policing and asked him what to do if a family member tried to remove me from my home against my will. "You call 911, he said, "and you use that word, against my will." He put a note on the file for our address. Elderly resident has capacity. Call supervisor. 5th, I baked. It steadied my hands and made the house smell like something no one can argue with. They came on Friday as the ladies arrived, because of course they did. People who want to move you like furniture choose the times they think you'll be easiest to lift. Cara knocked with the brisk confidence of a person who cannot conceive of a no that sticks. Mark was behind her, grim around the mouth, and Rick stood back like a man who wants to watch his project come together without getting his hands dirty. Happy Friday, Cara sang. We've got the van. The facility has an opening and they're willing to hold it until 6. Isn't that kind? The word you want is costly, I said. Rick's grin didn't reach his eyes. No rush, he said. It's just that the buyers are in town this weekend. The buyers? I asked. For what? He spread his hands, the benevolent patron of other people's futures. Your home. It isn't for sale, I said. It will be, Cara said. Once you sign. I opened the door wider. Ladies, I called, and Irene and Mrs. Patel and Ruth, who counts as a church lady by virtue of good punch and better legal pads, appeared behind me like the chorus in an opera, all pearls and purpose. Behind them, Alyssa set out plates. The room smelled like lemon and coffee and inevitability. Cara blinked. What's this? Tea, I said. Rick recovered first. Well, so, he said. We can do this another time. He turned to go, then found Sam Alvarez on the sidewalk with his beagle and his phone out, recording. Afternoon, Sam said. Got you at a bad time? Rick turned back with a smile that had lost a tooth. No problem, he said smoothly. Just a family discussion. Then you won't mind if we keep it civil, Ruth said, stepping forward. She has a way of occupying a room that makes the walls stand up straighter. Mark, Cara, may we speak inside? I stepped aside. They entered like people who know a trap might be on the floor and hope it is not for them. We sat at the table. Ruth placed a folder in front of her, not green, not meant to soothe, grey and thin and deadly as a blade. Here is Dr. Peters' letter confirming Evelyn's capacity as of Wednesday, she began. She set it down, gently. Here is a copy of the trust that holds her home. It is not for sale unless she decides to sell it. She has not decided. She set it down. Here is a log of attempts to interfere with her keys, car, bank account, and medication, with supporting documentation. I have filed a notice with the county. I have also prepared a petition for a protective order against harassment in case this continues today. She set that down too, and looked up with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Tea? Cara flushed blotchy red. This is disgusting, she said. We are trying to help. Help is what you do when someone asks, Irene said mildly. Control is what you do when you want the benefits. Mark looked at the papers like a man looking at a map that proves he is lost. Mom, he said. And there it was, the word I am weakest against. We can talk about this. We are, I said. Right now. Ruth slid one more paper across the table. This is a letter we will file if necessary, she said. It asks Adult Protective Services to investigate potential financial exploitation. No one wants that, I assume. So here is what happens instead. You stop any attempts to move Evelyn from her home without her consent. You return any keys you have taken. You cease contacting service providers on her behalf. And you apologize. Apologize? Cara snapped. To her? Start with me, Ruth said. Then try the person whose life you tried to rearrange. Mark touched her arm. Kara, he said, warning in his voice. She jerked away. Rick stood, hands up. Okay, he said quickly. We're done here. I'll step back. No hard feelings, Ogs. There are hard feelings, I said. They just aren't yours to manage. He backed toward the door. Sam's beagle barked at nothing in particular, and Rick flinched at something in himself. Kara drew herself up. She had a last card, and she wanted to play it. Fine, she said. But you will regret this. They won't always let you say no. We'll get you evaluated. Ruth's smile sharpened. You mean like Dr. Peters did Wednesday? Or the psychiatrist we can schedule next? Who will read the letter where you write, they always listen to doctors? Kara blanched. Mark looked at her. What letter? He asked. She swiped at her phone like it could swim. Nothing, she said. She's bluffing. I'm quoting, Ruth said. Mark stared at the papers. He looked very tired then, and very young, and for a moment I saw the boy again, the one who scraped his knees on our sidewalk and came inside to be cleaned up. He swallowed. I'm sorry, Mum, he said, the words small and painful. Kara turned her face toward him, lips parted. You're taking her side? The side of her life, he said. Of her house, she hissed. Of her life, he repeated, and there was finally a weight in his voice I recognized as his own. They left without the van. They left without another word to Rick, who shut his car door too hard and drove away fast enough to hit the only pothole on our block. The church ladies clapped softly, not for spectacle, but as a signal to each other. Phase complete. You might think that was the end. It wasn't. Battles don't end because you hold one ground. They end when the other side stops advancing. On Sunday, Mark came back alone. He parked crooked and sat in his car for a full minute before coming up the walk. He looked older than he is. He looked like a man who had been sleeping badly for 10 years and only now realized it. I messed up, he said at the door. Can I come in? Are you here to argue? I asked. No. He swallowed. I'm here to tell you something you won't want to hear. Then you should come in, I said, and I'll make coffee. He didn't touch the cup. He stared at his hands. Rick has me on a hook, he said. We bought into a deal last year. A flip. It went bad. He covered us. He's been charging interest. He said he'd forgive some of it if I helped move things along with you. He rubbed his forehead. Kara thinks this is just how you do things. Pressure. Leverage. She grew up with it. And you? I asked. I thought I could keep you safe and make him happy, he said. I was wrong. You were, I agreed. But wrong can be fixed when it's owned. He nodded. I'll fix it, he said. I'll take another job if I have to. I'll sell the boat. You don't have a boat, I said. I'll sell Rick's, he said, and we both smiled despite ourselves. He sobered. Kara's not going to like this. Then she won't like it, I said. That's not a reason to do the wrong thing. I know, he said, and for the first time in months, I believed him. 2 days later, he texted me a photo of a check. He had paid Rick half of what he owed with a loan from his 401k. It was not ideal. It was something. He told me he was looking at a second job. He told me he had an appointment with a counselor at church because I need to figure out why I did this. The message sat on my phone like a small plant in winter, not blooming but alive. Kara did not come by. She posted an article about the epidemic of elderly stubbornness and tagged no one. I did not respond. It is one thing to argue with your children. It is another to be dragged into a skirmish staged for an audience. Ruth called to say the recorder's notice had already borne fruit. 2 agents called her office looking for a listing. She told them politely that the property was not available. Visibility works, she said again. So does a community. That night, I put my husband's letters back in the box with a new note on top in my hand. I kept my promise. I closed it and felt the twist in the story settle into place. It was never about the house alone. It was about the promise. The church ladies asked if we might turn our Friday tea into something more regular. A circle, Mrs. Patel said, not a club. Clubs have dues and patience. Circles have a centre. We called it Wednesday table because words can build rooms, and we wanted one anyone could sit at. We gathered women who had been helped too hard. A widow whose son kept borrowing and added his name to her credit card by accident. A quiet woman whose niece convinced her the phone bill was too confusing and then ran up charges like fireworks. A retired teacher whose brother kept moving into her spare room and never out. We shared scripts, we printed forms, we practiced saying no without requiring the kindness to soften it. Officer Bryant spoke one week about calling 911 and about the difference between a welfare check and a removal. Claire from the bank came and explained how to add a note to an account. Do not authorize changes over the phone. Ruth came and was at her warmest, which can surprise people who only see her in court. She told us that the law is sometimes a wall and sometimes a ladder. The trick is knowing when to climb and when to say, "You cannot come in here." I baked. They brought casseroles that could feed armies and stories that could straighten spines. We cried and then we wrote. The writing helps. It makes a map. Mark asked to come by on a Wednesday night. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room full of women his mother's age and took off his hat like he was entering a sanctuary. "May I say something?" he asked. We nodded. "I did not understand until I tried to take something from someone who wouldn't give it," he said. "That sounds awful." "It is. I'm sorry." He looked at me then, and he looked at all of them. "I promise I will spend the rest of my life making that not the last sentence you remember from me." He stayed. He moved chairs. He washed plates. He listened like a person learning a language by immersion. He apologized to Mrs. Patel for rolling his eyes at his mother when she labeled freezer bags. He learned that labels are saviors when the day is long. He and Kara separated quietly. He told me later that she asked him to choose. He chose sleep over storm. It was not my victory. It was his. Rick is not a man who goes away when a door is closed. He looked for a window. He found none. He tried the chimney. He came one afternoon when I was deadheading roses, all cologne and confidence, and said he wanted to apologize. "For what?" I asked. "For the way things went," he said. "No hard feelings?" "There are hard feelings," I said again, and took off my gardening gloves. "There is also a restraining order in a folder on my table that will have your name on it if you step over this line." I pointed to the threshold of my gate. He stopped, as if he believed politeness was a spell and oaths a rumor. "You can keep walking," I said, "or you can hear me." He tilted his head. "I'm listening." "This street is smaller than your world," I said, "but it is mine. We know each other's faces here. We carry packages to the right doors. We notice who is new and we greet them. We are not for sale. We are for living." "You're very poetic," he said lightly. I'm very serious, I answered. The next call I make will not be a friendly one. He looked past me at the lilac that had decided to try one more bloom out of season, because plants, like women, sometimes do what they want when others think it is too late. He nodded, as if conceding a small point in a larger game. All right, he said. Have it your way. I am, I said. He left. He tried to sell another house on our block without the owner's consent, and met the same wall in Ruth that he met with me. He is less often in our neighborhood now. Maybe he found a place where the doorways are wider. Maybe he finally measured the value of a life as more than a line on a sheet. On my 73rd birthday, Mark brought flowers and a certificate he printed himself. Daughter of the Year, he wrote, and crossed out daughter and put son with a flourish. I know, he said when I laughed. I'm aware. He looked heavier in some ways and lighter in others, the way a man looks when he has been carrying his own weight and is finally strong enough to admit it. Alyssa brought her new boyfriend, who washed dishes without being asked. Irene brought a card that read, in large letters, "Still your life." We ate lemon cake. We sang badly. We sat around the table a long time after the candles were gone, because you do that when the people at your table have learned how to stay. After they left, I stood at the back door and looked at the hook where my keys were now, a new hook, higher, with a small brass plate above it that says home in my husband's neat block print from an old label maker. I touched it like a blessing. If you are listening because you are where I was, start a log. Call a lawyer before you need one. Name a person who will say no when you cannot. Bake if it helps. Ask the pharmacist to add a note. Tell the bank you want to be called by name. Install a camera if you like raccoons. Teach your son to read the fine print, even if he is 50. Teach yourself to say, "This is my life," out loud, until your walls know your voice. And if you wonder whether you are strong enough, ask yourself a better question. Who taught you to be? I did not learn steel last year. I learned it when I kept promises to things that did not bloom for 3 springs and then did. I learned it when I slept in a coat and called it temporary. I learned it when I said I do and meant it for 41 years. I learned it when I kept breathing after the person I loved stopped. So when my son brought a notary and a gift I did not want, I did what I have always done. I kept my promise. I kept my home. I kept my life. A year after the battle that started on my birthday, Ruth asked me to speak briefly at a community event. Not a lecture, she said. A story. I told them most of what I told you. Afterward, a woman my age with a crocheted hat came up to me. I thought I was going mad, she said. My son keeps taking my mail before I get it and says it's because I get confused. I'm not confused. You're not, I said. You're being managed. I wrote down Claire's name and Officer Bryant's and Ruth's and my own. Start here, I told her. Then come Wednesday. She did. We added another chair to the circle and another recipe to the notebook and another voice to the chorus that reminds each newcomer, you are not alone and you are not crazy. When someone tries to take your life from your hands, the word you need is no. The word you deserve is mine. Sometimes I catch Mark watching me at the table, not wary anymore, but curious, about who I am when I am not his mother, about what I built when he wasn't looking. He asks questions he should have asked 20 years ago, and I answer them like I should have then. Not as if time were scarce, but as if it were a thing we could stretch between us like a rope, steadying our steps. The lilac bloomed early this year. Sam says it's the weather. I say it's the soil and the promise and the way roots remember. Either way, it's the kind of purple that makes you forgive winters you thought would never end. Women from the Wednesday table take cuttings and promise to send pictures when theirs bloom. We will all nod as if we had anything to do with time. We will all know we did. I still walk every day because Dr. Peters insists, and because my legs want me to see what stays and what changes. The houses on our street are mostly the same from far away. Up close, you see the new door paint, the added ramp, the wind chime that wasn't there last summer. Up close, you see lives that have been kept, not perfectly, not without fear, but kept. If I ever leave this house, it will be because I decided to, and I will leave a note in the mailbox for whoever comes after me. This place holds promises. Keep them, and it will keep you. Don't, and it will hold someone else better than you did. When I turn 75, I will not be surprised if someone brings a form for me to sign. There will always be people who prefer other people's pens. I will make them tea. I will listen. I will show them the hook where my keys hang, and the green folder, and the table where we meet on Wednesdays. And I will say, as kindly as I can and as firmly as necessary, no. And then, if they want to understand how we got here, I will go back to the beginning.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.